A very good morning to one and all. I'm Dr. Neeta, Assistant Professor, Department of Zoology, Sacred Heart College, Chalakudi, and I will be talking to you about the topic evolution. Now, it is a subject in the 5th semester of B.Sc degree course in Zoology, and in this video, we will be talking about Unit 3, that is, Evidences for Organic Evolution. Now, in the previous videos, we saw Unit 1 and Unit 2 where we discussed about what is evolution, where does the term evolution come from, the different theories of evolution as proposed by many philosophers and scientists, and finally, we saw Oparin and Haldane's theory of chemical evolution, in which, under certain special conditions, on this earth 3.5 to 3.6 billion years ago, in the absence of oxygen, the primeval atmosphere, due to the high temperatures, high volcanic activity, and electrical discharges in the form of lightning, inorganic matter was converted into organic matter. Then we looked briefly into what are fossils, the different types of fossils, and what is fossilization. Now, in this unit, we will talk about the different evidences for organic evolution. In Unit 3, under the chapter Evolution, we look at the evidences of organic evolution. There are morphological and anatomical evidences, physiological and biochemical, embryological, paleontological, and taxonomical evidences that support that organic evolution actually happened or is still happening. Now, at the end of this unit, the learning outcomes will be, by the end of this unit, you're supposed to know the different evidences for organic evolution. You should be able to give examples under each, and you should be able to explain how each evidence supports the theory of organic evolution. This is another question that I would like you to think about is, do you think these evidences are true, or are they undisputed evidences? If they are not, then how would you explain the existence of these evidences in the present day world? The first evidence is based on morphological and anatomical features. And there are certain structural features that are basically similar in groups of organisms. For example, if you look at angiosperms or plants which bear flowers, and if you look at the flowers, they have petals, they have sepals, they have stigma, they have style and ovary. Only the size, the color, or the number may be different in different species, but the basic structure is the same. A similar such example is in the vertebral column of vertebrate groups which have the same structural plan. The limbs of tetrapod animals also have the same pentadactyl plan. Such structural features suggest that these groups of organisms share a common ancestry. Now, why are they different to look at? These differences may be due to adaptive modifications for the diverse modes of life that these organisms face. Now, you see certain organisms have more common features and certain have very few common features. Those which have very few common features would have diverged much earlier in geological history. Now, under the morphological and anatomical evidences, we can look at three main structures: the homologous organs, the analogous organs, and the vestigial organs. Now, what are homologous organs? These are organs which show structural similarity but functional diversity between the adult organs of different groups. They also suggest a common ancestry and similar embryonic origin. The homologous structures look different because they get specialized for the different functions that they perform in the different groups of animals. This has led to adaptive radiation, which again leads to what is called divergent evolution. The examples of homologous features include the pentadactyl limbs of vertebrates. These are found in all classes of tetrapods, and they can even be traced back to fins of certain fossil fishes from which the amphibians and later all the other tetrapods evolved. If you look at this picture, you can see the forelimbs of human, horse, cat, bat, bird and whale are given. All of them have a similar structure. They have a single proximal bone, two distal bones, a series of wrist bones, 5 series of palm bones and 5 series of digits. This suggests that these group of organisms share a common ancestry. But why do they look different? Because of the modifications that have resulted from the different functions these limbs perform. For example, monkeys use their forelimbs for grasping and climbing, whereas in horses it is adapted for body support and running. In moles it is modified for burrowing. In whales it has been modified into a flipper, whereas in bats it is turned into wings for flying. So because of the different modes of life and different functions these forelimbs perform, they are, though they have a similar structure, they look a little different. Another example of homology are insect mouth parts. Now the insect mouth parts have the same basic structure. The labrum, the mandibles, the hypopharynx, the maxillae and the labia. However, they are modified based on the different modes of feeding, such as biting and chewing, piercing and sucking, sucking and siphoning, chewing and lapping. They are differently modified. With this, we come to an end of the homologous structure. Now, under the structural and anatomical evidences, so we have the second example, that is analogous organs. Though there is no phylogenetic significance, as there is no common ancestry between animals possessing analogous organs, it is still considered an evidence for organic evolution. Now, analogous organs are those which share a functional similarity but structural diversity between the adult organs of different groups. This is due to a type of evolution called convergent evolution or parallel evolution. In this type of evolution, under similar environmental conditions, fundamentally different structures in different groups of organisms undergo similar modifications to serve those similar functions. For example, if you look at bats, birds and insects, all of them fly. And their wings, though structurally very different, serve the purpose of flying. Other examples include the jointed legs of insects and vertebrates, or the tail fin of fish, whale and lobster, which help them swim. Look at this picture showing analogous organs of insect, bat and bird. You can see because of their functional similarity, they look similar, but they are structurally very different. Now we'll move on to the third example under morphological and anatomical evidences, which are vestigial structures. Now, what are vestigial structures? These are highly degenerate or underdeveloped, or apparently they may look like they are functionless. They are smaller and they are simpler when you compare them to the same or corresponding organs in the ancestral species. In the present species, these organs would not be useful or necessary for the possessors. But in the ancestral species, these would be well developed and functional. Examples under vestigial organs include the hind limbs of whales and pythons. They do not need hind limbs to walk. The halters or the vestigial hind wings of flies and mosquitoes do not help in flying. The vestigial wings of flightless birds such as ostrich or emu, as you know, do not help them to fly. There are certain vestigial organs in humans as well. These include the nictitating membrane, the pointed canine, the vermiform appendix, the muscles that help move the ears, the hair on the body, or the nipples in males, etc. These are of no use to the possessor now, but in the ancestral species, these would have been well developed and functional. Now, the second evidence that suggests the organic evolution actually happens are the physiological and the biochemical evidences. Now, if you see all organisms, right from bacteria to the most complex organisms in the present world, the humans, they all have similar biochemical properties, metabolic pathways, and catalytic enzymes. If you take, for example, DNA, it is the genetic material that you find in all organisms except certain RNA viruses. And in this DNA, the genetic code is the same for gene expression, for transcription or translation. And also ATP is universally used as an energy source in all organisms. So ATP is a universal source of biological energy, and cytochrome C, you would have heard of cytochrome C, which is a respiratory pigment found in the mitochondria of all eukaryotes. It is formed of 104 amino acids. Only the sequence varies with the species. If you see the sequence also, closely related species have a similar sequence. Those which have diverged earlier in the geological history have less similar sequence. Such sequence comparison is also similar in the case of the DNA sequence. If you take organisms with common ancestors, they have similar DNA sequences. So this is a molecule of ATP. ATP is used as the universal source of energy in all organisms. If you look at DNA, the structure of the DNA is the same in all organisms. The genetic code is similar in all organisms. If you look at the phylogeny based on nucleotide differences in cytochrome C, you can see that closely related organisms have less differences compared to organisms from which they diverged earlier in geological history. Now, the third type of evidence which suggests that organic evolution actually happens is embryological. Now, if you look at all sexually reproducing organisms, they all start from a single cell, the zygote, which is formed by the union of the sperm and the ovum. This single cell zygote then divides and develops into first the blastula and then the gastrula, which is also seen in all the organisms. Now, the developmental history of an organism, that is called ontogeny. So the developmental history of or the ontogeny of vertebrates, if you look at it, it is strikingly similar. That is, if you look at the embryological stages in the different vertebrates, you can see similarities in form and structure. That is, there are gill clefts, notochord, tail, and rudiments of eyes and ears in all these organisms. During their embryological development, the notochord gets replaced by the vertebral column. Limbs develop from limb buds. These are seen in the embryological history or the developmental history of all vertebrates. It was Fritz Müller and Ernst Haeckel, German biologists, who formulated what is called the recapitulation theory or the biogenetic law. According to them, ontogeny or the developmental history is actually a short recapitulation or a recap of the phylogeny, that is the evolutionary history of that particular animal. According to them, Ontogeny is a short recapitulation of phylogeny, and phylogeny is the mechanical cause behind ontogeny. So the developmental history or the ontogeny of the organism is simply a brief repetition of the evolutionary history of that organism, that is the phylogeny of its race. So in order to support their theory or law, they said there is, if you see in all the vertebrates, there are the appearance of gill slits in embryos. Now lung-breathing animals do not need gills, but if you see their embryos, they have gill slits in any one of their stages of developmental history. For example, another example is if you see the mammalian heart. During embryonic development, it is first two-chambered, like you see in fishes, and it becomes three-chambered, as you see in amphibians, and finally it becomes the four-chambered heart that we all have. This is a picture showing the different vertebrate groups and their developmental history. This is the fish, the amphibians, reptile, bird, and man. If you look in the beginning stages, they almost look very similar, suggesting they have a common ancestry. The fourth type of evidence that supports organic evolution is paleontology. Now in the previous videos, we talked about what fossils are and how fossils are made, how fossilization takes place. Now fossil records are relics or remains of organisms that lived in the past. When you look at these fossil organisms of the past look very different from the organisms that live in the present. Older fossils are more simple and primitive, whereas the more recent ones are complex and more advanced. Mammals and angiosperms are the last evolved groups. However, the main limitation or main problem with looking at paleontological evidences is a lack of the continuity in records. There are a large number of gaps. There are a lot of missing links between these organisms. Finally, we go on to taxonomical evidences. Now, taxonomy is the way of arranging the different organisms into different phyla, into different classes, into different orders, etc. Now, taxonomy is an artificial hierarchical system showing the categorical relationships between the species, and this is based on certain predefined characters. Now, each level in the taxonomic system denotes a greater degree of relatedness to a particular organism if it is closer in the hierarchical scheme. So, organisms belonging to the same family are more similar. The organisms belonging to the same order are less similar than those in the same family, etc. Now, evolutionary relationships are reflected in taxonomy. Taxonomy also helps us to understand how close different species are related. This can be done because it shows the common ancestor of each organism. It also shows how far these different species were one and the same long before. Taxonomy shows when new species were formed or how closely related species the different organisms are. The closer the organisms are to each other in classification, the closer they will be in real life. I've given you an example to show that taxonomy can show you how related different organisms are. For example, the American alligator and the broad-snouted caiman are more closely related than the American alligator and the Australian freshwater crocodile because they have a more recent common ancestor. So with this, we come to the end of Unit 3. Now let us look at the learning outcomes of this unit. So at the end of this unit, we were supposed to know the different evidences. So we saw the morphological and anatomical evidences, in which homologous organs, analogous organs, and vestigial organs prove that organic evolution actually happens. Then we moved into biochemical and physiological evidences, wherein we saw how DNA is the genetic material in all organisms except a few viruses, and how ATP is the universal source of energy in all living organisms. Then we moved on into embryological evidences, where we saw how the biogenetic law says that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, and phylogeny is the mechanical cause behind ontogeny. Then we moved on into paleontological evidences, which we had done previously in another unit as well. We saw how fossils are undisputed evidences for evolution. The presence of fossils suggests that there were organisms in the past which do not exist now. Then finally we looked at taxonomical evidences. Taxonomy is the arrangement of organisms into phyla, classes and orders based on their similarities. And the very fact that taxonomy shows the common ancestry proves that organic evolution actually happens. Now, I had asked you a question on whether these evidences are undisputed evidences. Do you really believe that such evidences actually prove organic evolution happens? If not, would you be able to justify these evidences? I would like you to think about this. The answer is according to what you think about it, and there's nothing ever wrong or right in it. Thank you for watching this video.